I want to go over the results of the town meeting member survey that we did in the first half of March and think about what it tells us and what we can do with information. And I think a few disclaimers about surveys. The first is, as soon as you ask the question, the answer is worse. Like, as soon as someone says to you, did you like the meal? You start thinking of everything you didn't like about it. You thought you were fine, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, it could have been better, more salt, more this. So the survey itself has some of that. Like, there's some negativity in the comments just by human nature. And it almost, I think, happens the first time you do a survey on anything, because then people sort of get it out of their systems. But I think, as you'll see, there's some negativity, and that doesn't mean things are terrible. It means we asked for the first time. Also, the way we ask the questions, people interpreted them however they interpreted them. And there's no way to say to someone taking the survey, oh, but you don't know what I meant when I asked the question. Or when they rank something to say like, no, you weren't answering the question I was asking. So you take what you get. And there was enough consistency in the comments that I don't think that it was like wildly vague. But I also think that's important. So like you'll see there's a question about the website. We didn't specify which website. There's no way to know that some people meant Pat's website and some people might have meant some other website. It's just, you get what you get. I also want to say, and you guys know this, but I'm presenting the data and summarized it, but we developed the survey collaboratively in Town Meeting Member Association with a lot of discussion of the questions, both the content questions and the demographic questions. And then Jane Flanagan, who's on Town Meeting Member Association, who's a PhD nurse researcher, helped me think about some of the data analysis, and Mike Toffel, who's an HBS professor, helped think of the data presentation. So this isn't just sort of me going out there, which I think is important. And I will say, I tried to stay disinterested with the data. That is not to infuse my own opinions, but just to present the data as it percolated. And lastly, I'll say this, that there's a lot of information here, but it's really an invitation to do something. Like if we look at it, we're like, oh, that's interesting, we really won't achieve very much. And there are certainly opportunities that our own town meeting membership is telling us that we should do better. And I immediately before this, I presented the same data to the advisory committee, who are, we're interested in the responses that were specific to them as well as to the survey overall. And I think it's the same, the same thing we made to them. Like this isn't, it's interesting, but it's also kind of a call to action. And we got a high enough response rate among ourselves, but also there are people on advisory who aren't on town meeting who sort of echoed some of the themes of lack of clarity about process and how do you get in. That if we're feeling that among ourselves as town meeting members, it's mirrored and maybe even magnified among people who aren't in this sort of little town meeting world. So, okay, so the survey itself, we had 3 basic questions. The first was, what do you find satisfying about being on town meeting? And there were 15 options, and we asked people to choose 3 of them. And then the next were sort of 2 questions that were mirrors of each other. What do you think works well, and what do you think are opportunities for improvement? Each of those had 25 options, and we asked people to pick 5 of them. Not to rank them, but just to pick the top 5 that mattered to them. Then we asked kind of an overall question, a 0 to 100, what's your experience at town meeting? And that's one of those where you never know what, one person is focused on this part, someone else is focused on this part, but it gives you this sort of gestalt of, does it work or doesn't it? And then we asked a number of free text questions, which were really helpful. We got 330 free text responses that revealed some preferences and opinions that didn't percolate out of the more quantitative questions. For example, people like the town meeting listserv, but then 17 people told you what was wrong with it. Things like that. So that's really helpful, getting that free text. And then lastly, we asked demographics. We asked for age. Initially, we were going to do age bands, but no one wanted to be the oldest group, so we just did age. We asked for self-identified gender and free text self-identified race and ethnicity, years on town meeting, and then we also asked years living in town. And I'll say I didn't do anything with that because I couldn't figure out how it was meaningful. Like, if you were Stephanie and you grew up here until you were 12 and then moved back, does that, when you were 40, does that matter? So I didn't do anything. And then, oops, I don't know what I just did. And so just lastly, I'm really just processing this. This isn't my data. It's not my survey. It's our data. So who responded? I looked at some of these, the ones that I could, comparing who responded to this survey to who's the underlying membership of town meeting, who are the town meeting members. So was it a good match? Was it representative? And our overall response rate, like from a social science perspective, 60% response rate, close to that, is very high. But then you might say, well, it might be high, but is it also representative? And so on age, for example, our average age of respondent was 57. The actual average age in the town meeting member population is 60. So that's like not a bad match. If the average age were, I don't know, on our survey had been 40 and the average age in town meeting was 60, you'd say, wow, it's over-representing young people or something like that. So that was pretty well represented. On females, it's a pretty good match. 48% of respondents were female, 52% of the underlying population are. With men, this is interesting. It looks like a low representation, and then there was this bulk of men or of people who didn't identify their gender, and we don't know who they are. I have some speculation, and you'll see in the data why I sort of speculate who they are, but there was, you might say we were somewhat underrepresented in men versus women in the response. As far as the race ethnicity, so some people, a small number of people didn't self-identify, but largely, other than 4 individuals, everyone was some variation on non-Hispanic white. So that is to say, some people said, I'm white and Jewish, or white and this, and white and that, but that was always like Eastern European, or American, white and American, or like things that were, for this purpose, pretty much white. And the only people who didn't, there were only 4 people who didn't identify in some category of non-Hispanic white. So from an analytic perspective, I didn't use that as a variable to make any comparison. One of our goals was to be non-identifying. We know that the population of people who are non-white is smaller than it should be. It's not huge. It may be that people didn't want to self-identify because by ethnicity or race, because it self-identifying. It's a small enough population. But either way, it was valuable getting that information. It was also, honestly, for race and ethnicity compared to the sort of, if you needed done check boxes, people's self-concepts were really different. That has nothing to do with the survey, but it's just kind of fascinating how people self-identify given the choice. The survey years of town meeting average was 9, with a range from 1 year to 45 years, and I'll show you a scatter plot of what that really looked like. And then years living in town, I said I didn't use this, but the average was 26, ranging from 3 to 85. There wasn't a mechanism to track duplicates. I don't think anyone was like stuck in the ballot box saying like, I want to do that survey again and again. But just because it was anonymous, because we had no identifying factors, so we couldn't track that. So this is a distribution of the actual town meeting membership by age versus the survey responses. So you can see the fit is really pretty good. Hi there. Hi. You're just in time for the exciting part. Okay. I'm just showing whether the responses on the survey were a relatively good fit to who the underlying town meeting population. So you can see it's like a good fit at every age until you get to over 70, where the survey underrepresents that age group. And this is the 14% that didn't identify their age. And I can tell you my speculation and why that is, but either it's sprinkled evenly across ages or it disproportionately falls. But you know that it's not a perfect match. So that means people over 70 were less likely to have completed the survey or more likely to have self-identified as unspecified age. And we can look at that. I want to point out, I found this super interesting, I was looking at this today. So 58% of town meeting members are over 60. So, how are you doing? That's a lot proportionately, and I looked at what proportion of the town's population is over 60, and it's 21%. Now, that's interesting. You might say, oh, that's not representative. Well, then I looked at the Senate, like the current Senate, and 64% of the Senate is over 60. This may matter to some of us in this room. 70% of Democrats are over 60 actually, and only 57% of Republicans, so just interesting fact. But, you know, it's sort of a product of, we have a lot of smart people who are aging who are still involved, and in the Senate and in town. But as some of the comments come through, some of the comments are about diversity of age. What would it mean to have younger people? One thing it would mean would be for people who are older not to run again, which is a hard choice, but I think it's worth pointing that out. So this is the age distribution. This is looking at the age distribution of the survey respondents by gender. So you can see it's, you know, sort of evenly matched till you get to the 50 to 59-year-olds, and it's disproportionately female there. And then you can see the unspecified, most of whom also didn't identify their gender. Okay, so this is sort of the last slide of who responded. I found this personally really interesting. This is a scatter plot. How many years someone's been on town meeting. So, you know, we have the person who's been here 45 years is up there in the my upper left quadrant. And this is age. So when you're in town meeting and it feels like everyone older than you has been there forever, it's actually, it doesn't present that way. This is to say, like, most of these dots, whether they're 78-year-olds or 28-year-olds, have been on town meeting fewer than 10 years. And so when, you know, if it feels like everyone's been there forever, that actually isn't what the data show. And that's kind of, it's interesting in a bunch of different ways. It shows that there's turnover, but when you see kind of what's working for whom, you start to see that the longer you've been there, the happier you are. So maybe people who have been there less time don't stay. You sort of have to stick it out to be happy. But that also says something about what would it take to bring more and different people to town meeting. So the results. First point is you can kind of trust the results. It was a high response rate, relatively generalizable in terms of distribution, where it wouldn't be a perfect fit, it still is informative. If everybody had been female or everyone had been over 60, we would lose a piece of the population, but it's reasonably well distributed. So the key messages I saw were that people like the same things, but see different opportunities to improve. So for example, what people find satisfying, people like being engaged in policy and community, they sort of find less joy in the process stuff. And that was the response to what do you find satisfying about town meeting? Then when we asked that question, what do you think works and what do you think is an opportunity, there was more agreement about what works. People like the tools and the resources, so when I met with Pat, that was like good news. And then there's less agreement around what doesn't work. So, you know, themes of lack of diversity of people and ideas, that was the predominant one, but also opportunity to improve the meeting experience, increase civility and transparency, and we'll look at those more closely. There were 330 free text comments, which was great because you really get stories then. You don't just sort of have numbers and have to guess what people are thinking, they tell you. They really tell you. And that 0 to 100, I'll talk about one second, but I feel like I should say, I mean, this is a small group, but it's still important to say, we reviewed this in Town Meeting Member Association. We met with Sandy, Ernie, George, Arthur, and I sat down with Sandy. So this is familiar information to him. Pat and I sat down, and then Lloyd and I spoke on the phone. So this is like, I think it's important to know that even though there's some negativity in the results, it's like not trying to sideswipe anyone. I think the more we share the results and think about what to do, the better. And Sandy was intending to be here tonight. His wife is home from surgery and rehab, and he's taking care of her. I offered him that we could Zoom him in. He wasn't into that idea, understandably. I'm not sure he knew what I meant, but he was the first to say that. And so that's important. So this question, the 0 to 100, is you could say, like, how is it working and who's it working for? So the average score was a 67. That's not great. Like, if your kid brought that home on a test, you wouldn't be happy. If you say it like 7 out of 10, it doesn't sound so bad, but it definitely has an opportunity to improve. And it also sort of led me to look at who is it working for by age, by gender, by years on town meeting, and this is where you start seeing some differences. So the ratings were highest among men over 60 with an average rating of 76. They were lowest among women between 50 and 69, and they were highest among people who did town meetings 16 years or more. So the longer you stay, the older you are, the happier you are. That's great if that's our goal. Like, that's who it's working for. If our goal is to see could being part of town government, and by corollary being being sort of engaged in the town, even if you're not elected to government, work more broadly, this tells us it might not be doing that right now. So what can we do with that?
So Jennifer, I just want to so 71 is not that different than 67 in terms of highest among pioneers and 60 or more years of experience compared to the average. It's a little bit higher, incrementally higher, but I don't think it tells us a lot there.
It's not dramatic, and I'll show you it. I'll show you that in a picture, and you could say like, well, is that you can start seeing some bigger differences. But you're right; these aren't like they gave it 100 and they gave it a 4.
Right.
This is the distribution. You can see there's like a long tail of people who are giving very low scores, and then they're kind of. It's not exactly bimodal, but it sort of is. You've got these are the modal scores. So 18 people gave us a 75, so that's like a C. That's like a solid C. 80 people gave 14, and then you can see there were some lower and some higher scores. And then what brings it down is a bunch of people saying it's really bad. And whether, their voices aren't, in a sense any louder, but that, if most people rate things between 60 and 100, and then you have some intrepid people who are willing to give something a 2, it really brings the average down. And it's interesting to look at who's doing that. So this is the picture, and you're right, like that's not a huge difference. So over here on the left is years in town meeting. And you can see that it's lower on people who've been there shorter. And that, 65 to 70 is a decent percent difference, but it's a pretty small n, but it's what we have to work with. And then those unspecified people, and this is where I start speculating about them, they rank it even higher than the people who have been here a long time. So does that mean those are happy people who have been here a short time but don't want to tell you how long? Or does that mean those are people who have been here a long time and don't want to tell you how long?
I was confused by this question because the question was how effective is town meeting, or whatever, however you phrased it or someone phrased it. Is it, if the goal of town meeting is to vote for warrant articles, that would be
effective.
It would be effective because we go and we vote. So what are you interpreting that question to me? Like how I feel when I'm sitting with my precinct 12 and we're all, jabbing each other because Harry's making a great argument, or, So I guess that's my question is to me it's effective because we're actually voting and we're doing our job.
So this was how it was phrased. How would you evaluate your experience of the effectiveness of our semi-annual town meeting overall? And you're right, like if your measure is, we got through all warrant articles, that's effective.
Right.
If your measure is, did every voice get heard that needed to be heard? Or was everyone respected in a way they needed to feel respected? There's a different answer to that question. And the lens you're looking at it through, probably 140 people, 140 different lenses. And yet, that's sort of like everything, like a Yelp review. You're giving your review of a restaurant, what your criteria are may differ from mine, but at some point you have to sort of say, okay, we aggregate responses and assume that it's going to cover the range of perceptions. But you're right, like if we had said, how effective are we at voting on every warrant article? Like, yes, we do. We're very effective in that. Are we, and then it sort of changes from there. Just to keep going with this, so here you can start to see some bigger differences. This is by age band, so you can see like the gap between 57 and 75. To me, that's a pretty big difference by age band. So people who are older are, given overall higher rating. And then the people who are unspecified are a lot closer to the older people than to the younger people. This is by gender. So men are ranking it about 7 points higher than women, and the unspecified pool are just about the same as the men. So you can start to see why I speculated the unspecified might be older men. Like there's, I can't, I'll never know if that's right, but you can kind of see how the trends match. And then lastly over here, this is looking at gender by age band. So you can see, I mean, to me, this is a pretty big difference from 75, 76 for older men to 57 to 59 for women, between really young women, really young women in their 50s. And what's funny is like the happiest people are men in their 40s. I don't know why. And there's no one here to represent. Is anyone here to represent that? Ken? Shirley here too. But it's, you know, I think those are pretty significant swings when you look at it that way. The end isn't, you know, the volume isn't that huge, but our total population is, you know, at best 240. So to me, that does say something. And again, if you ask the question, and Lloyd, you should feel free to comment on this, because I know this is something you think about too. Like, if you're saying who's it working for, and you say it's working really well for these people, it's actually working pretty well for women over 70, if that's who we wanted to work best for, that's great. But if we want to figure out what it would take to work a little better for more people, that might mean looking at it through a different lens. And so that's kind of all I have about that question, and then it gets a little more granular. So the next category I looked at was these factors of satisfaction, and we had 15 of them listed, and so these are sort of ranked by the most often mentioned and the least often mentioned. The most often mentioned, and these are exploited, so the blue ones are ones that are related to policy in some way, the things that make people feel good: policy, learning about town issues, the budget. The gray ones are ones that are more about community, so contributing time to community, being part of with fellow representatives, being connected to town, representing neighbors. And that's what you would expect. Like, people do stuff because it makes them feel good. We're not being forced to do this. I found it interesting that the least frequently mentioned things were the experience of the meeting itself, and then we get into that more with the what's working, what are the opportunities. And I also found really interesting, the very least often mentioned was the international and national warrant articles that some people feel extremely strongly about, but apparently not that many, as far as the satisfaction part. So we put as much time into those as we put into any other warrant article, but it was sort of, you know, everything is sort of interesting. That was interesting to me. What does that mean? Are they important enough that, you know, essentially 1% of the people who find that satisfying are tipping the boat for the 99%? And when we talked about this with Sandy, he said, well, you know, I tend to shift those to the end. So if you want to leave, you can leave. But it's kind of useful information to have it. And I don't know if people have opinions about that. Like, you know, I never created one of the sort of international or national warrant articles, but they take time. And
I would just say that for the 24% at the top, in a very concrete way, if you have an opportunity to weigh in on, you know, $330 million, which is the town budget, that's quite a bit of weight. So, you know, I mean, I certainly find that, I wouldn't say satisfying, but I personally, I think that's a tremendous responsibility. And to be able to, in consort with others, make reasonable choices, hard choices, I think that's, yeah, that's very satisfying. Especially since, you know, I ended up paying twice the taxes this year.
In direct response to your question about the national international, so I'm in my first term as town meeting, and I was surprised to see them there, and I was sort of kind of hit a double take. Why are we spending time on this when there's things that have to do with $330 million that we should be focusing on? Yes, we want, you know, nuclear disarmament. Yes, we want, you know, things changed on those levels, but I'm not sure that that's the role of our town meeting, per se. We should impeach Trump. Yes, fine, okay, but that's, you know, we've got other things that we're working on, and who's listening to us anyway? it goes onto the record, and that's, I guess, important for part of town meeting, and, Brookline town meeting in 2017, 2018, 2019 has these things, but,
Vote against them.
it's critical. Pardon me?
Then vote against them.
Well, it's not the
No,
content.
no, no,
so
no,
much as
I'm
the
not saying that the content is bothersome, I'm just saying the amount of time that we're spending on it and the efforts, it seems like it's taking us away from what our business actually is. That's all I'm thinking. I think I can remember one of those warrant articles that I didn't agree with. Like, great, yes, let's move on, kind of thing.
And I would say this, so when we presented this to Sandy, there was sort of, I'll say two things. He mentioned a previous moderator, I don't remember the person's name, who put a prohibition on those, and that was the end of his moderator career. So, and the other side of it is, and this comes up more, because it feels like, where's my free speech? I want to be able to say that, even if I don't want to say it. I want to be able to say it. People who submit warrant articles are people who know how to submit warrant articles.
Right.
And so, you get into sort of, once you know how to do it, it's like, well, I could keep doing it. And that is part of what we'll see about what people see as opportunities. And, we don't really have I don't think there's a limit to how many warrant articles can be submitted in any cycle. So you could just keep going forever, and I mean, you guys would know better than I do. Like, advisory could advise someone that, as written, this isn't going to get very far. There's a lot of vetting, but even still, it's a very interesting, like, democratically, we want the possibility. In terms of what we're doing, how important is it? What are the trade-offs?
Hi, I'm also a first-time Harvard guy from Precinct 15, first time on the town meeting. Just as a response, it is very important that the town go on record for a lot of these things because it's part of our platform of the state or of the city. Because if we have other town meetings around the state doing similar things or other city councils, we're making a national statement. So these aren't for naught. So I understand what you're saying.
You have to go on record and.
Yeah, well, not just our record, but it's not like they go into a dark hole somewhere. It's now a platform for it to be used for the future, however we want to use it in terms of our political will of the state.
And I'll just say one.
I've done this before with school committees working on charter expansion, or actually the opposition's charter expansion. We went around to every school committee in 351 towns, and that helped us defeat charter expansion in Massachusetts because we got all the school committees to oppose it, and that was one of our ways of doing
That feels
it.
more direct, though.
It depends how you want
Nuclear
to use it.
disarmament?
It depends how you want to use it.
So I will say this, and this comes up in the comments. Like, people said, why don't we use the comment section from advisory like the Supreme Court? They don't have to comment on everything. So we use a uniform process when we're, hearing about every single warrant article. And it may be that there's a streamlined process. Like, if there's unanimity, do we have to hear as many opinions about, I don't know, whatever it is, that everybody, everybody likes JP Licks. Do we need to hear 10 people say that? If everyone agrees in the first place, could we vote? Is the whole dialogue and process as valuable as the outcome? So like, that's where some of the comments go. Oh, sorry.
I think you pretty well said what I was thinking of. It'd be interesting to review how much time is spent against the percentage of people in favor of a particular warrant article. So, I mean, that's involved, but, we've all had the situation where the moderator says, well, we spent a lot of time talking about this particular thing, and the vote was like 90% in favor. And it'd be interesting to see how that sort of thing worked out.
But to that point, I think when you're young in town meeting and you haven't been there for your first year, it's your second year, often it takes a while to listen. And sometimes you're actually not ready and you still want to listen.
Sure.
I think the older you get, it's easier to listen to who's talking. You've heard them speak before, you have an opinion about them. So everything gets easier in some ways about the mechanics of kind of campiness of what was going on. So I think cutting off the debate, I think Sandy does a good job saying, I have these 3 people left to speak, are we gonna vote on that? I actually, I
And for the record.
it does get tedious, I mean, on some things you do, but if someone is signed up to speak, there's a reason.
For the record, I never vote to cut off debate.
Joanne, did you want to speak?
I feel bad taking any time talking about the 1% thing, but kind of following on to the other 1%, 13. What Barbara said, that, you know, we're also creating a historical record. We could go back and look at town meeting 200 years ago. And we are leaving a legacy for generations in the future about these big, lofty ideas. But, you know, trends and thinking changes. And as annoying as they are, I think it still kind of evokes the small group of people who were here when it was Muddy River meeting in the town square.
So 2 other thoughts on this. Again, this is one that is about interpretation. It may be that people didn't answer this unless they were the one who wrote the warrant article. And you're not going to have loads of people who were the warrant article writer. So it may be not that everyone disliked it, it just percolated for a very small percent of people. But it also may be, and you'll see this in the comments, that there are ways that our processes could be different. So it might not be the choice of do that or don't do that. I think Sandy made a fair point, like there's no faster way to lose your job than to, muzzle the voice of democracy. But that doesn't mean the way we do things procedurally always has to be the same way. And the experience of new versus older town meeting members is something that percolates. So I will keep going. So this is, don't try to look at numbers, and there are no words here. This is really just a visual representation of how much more agreement there was on what works. There are like much bigger pieces of the pie. 20% of people or 19% think that works. I can't remember what it is, but I see it on the next page. Here, this is the opportunities, and it's all these slivers. Like there's a lot less agreement about what works. And I'll tell you what the things are, but I think that visual side by side tells you a lot. It's not surprising, really, that everyone has a different opinion about what could work better, but it is interesting that we are much more in agreement on what works, and it's kind of weird stuff. Oh, wait, hang on. These, for some reason that didn't, I don't know why those labels didn't come through, but these were the categories that people saw as strengths. So reading from the bottom up, 19% of people really like the materials received in advance. So it's hard to believe that that's the thing people are most passionate about, but that was the greatest agreement, which is good. Like that's. Wait, and I will say this about comments too. People like that, but that doesn't mean they don't have complaints about it. So
of course.
They like it, but could it be, text searchable? Could it be electronic and not on paper? But they like receiving it. Electronic tools for voting. People like that, except that they complain about it. So I think in the more distant past, how did you guys vote? Who's been here long enough to? You stood up. You counted? Like he literally counted head by head? Okay, so it's understandable why people would like
Well,
it.
before that was paper, right?
Yeah. Okay, so given the skew toward people who have been on television a long time, if that's the point of comparison, those tools would seem pretty great.
And
If you
had
think-
counted everything, right? You counted the cards.
Had you used to count cards? Not in the Las Vegas way, but in the,
No, the way, historically, if it was recorded vote, it would be a roll call. If it was a counted vote, it would be a standing head count. And then they moved off to roll call to basically recorded votes was a card. But they essentially did it by a head count. And then the roll call was recorded after the fact the next day. And then we went to the electronic vote.
okay, so I would bet, I'm just gonna speculate again, I don't know, but I would bet people who've been there a short time didn't think the electronic voting was that great because it is kind of funky. But if you've been through that, it would seem like a miracle.
Exactly.
And then information sessions offered on warrant articles in advance, communication through the town meeting listserv. This is another one. People like it and they like to complain about it, as you'll see in the comments. Timing of the meeting, days, duration. Some people like it, but then there actually were a lot of comments of suggestions. So people who didn't weigh in on it here, but said, why can't it end at 10 o'clock? Why can't we just have some consistency? And that was distributed equally among young and older people. It was you know, being predictable isn't such bad. So anyway, that's that side. If I go to this is the pie chart of what people see as opportunities. You can see the labels here. So about 9% commented on diversity, and like explicitly I should say, that means a vast majority of people who are white were saying we're not diverse enough. So the corollary to that might be, well, maybe we have to get out of the way if we want to make room for people who don't look like us. You know, there's sort of, nobody said like, we're not diverse enough, and so let me make room, because there isn't a clear suggestion of how you would do that, at least yet. But there are some in the suggestions. But that diversity, and then we start getting, so I should say, of the things people like, all of them, without exception, were before you walk into the high school auditorium. The things people don't like, a lot of them are in the auditorium or about clarity. So interaction among the speakers was an opportunity. Orientation to being an effective town meeting member was an opportunity, which I think is important if we think about how do we open the doors, make town meetings look different or feel different. You have to make it learnable. You can't have it be sort of like, okay, if you stick around 16 years, it'll be really clear. Because, you know, what we don't have here is the dropout rate. You know, how many people didn't stay? You probably have that path. And then a whole bunch of clarity, and I'll show you what those are on the next page. But those are ones where there seemed to be a lot of relative agreement. So diversity, clarity of the process of modifying warrant articles, orientation via town meeting member, clarity of committee and commission processes, clarity of warrant development, clarity of committee and commission processes, and role of town meeting members in advisory. There were a lot of questions on advisory, and then clarity of process, rules that govern town meeting, like the meeting itself. So that's a lot of ambiguity. That's a lot of people saying this could be a lot more clear. And we'll look in a second for some of those, how that breaks down by gender or age or years on town meeting. Or I should say, there was more central agreement on those overall. So what we'll really look at are the ones that are yellow. So these were ones where some people thought one thing and some people thought another, and it made it interesting to think about what were the differences between those groups. And so the interaction among the speaker and questioners, we had some people thought it was an opportunity, some people thought it was a strength. The experience of impromptu speaking, of meetings, the meeting itself, the website, the diversity of ideas. So the next couple pages will show you the graphic representation of who had opinions about those. So strengths and opportunities, the perceptions of dividing factors. If something's red, that means it's an opportunity. If it's green, it means it's a strength. So less than half of people view the experience of town meeting, the facilitation, time management, communication as a strength. And it was rated worst among newer town meeting members. And it was actually, so you can see, I think it says 73%, 71% of newer town meeting members, fewer than 6 years, so that's like fewer than 2 terms, saw this as something that really needed to improve, whereas only 43% of more experienced town meeting members, but even among that group, 43% seeing opportunity to improve is a lot. But that's, you know, the longer you've been there, the less you see that kind of overall experience as needing to improve. And if you look at it by gender, actually men rated this as an opportunity more than women did, and then the unspecified group, it's hard to know how to interpret. This question of interaction among the speaker and questioners, it's a similar pattern, but not quite as pronounced. So 70% of newer town meeting members see it as an opportunity, and 56% of longer time. This one, women see this as a much greater opportunity. So whatever the dynamic of those interactions are, women don't see that that's working. But 57% of men don't see it working. So it's not a complete mismatch, but it's certainly a stronger pattern among women.
The two things that come to mind immediately are, unpacking what not working means. If that's something about time, if that's something about quality of exchange, the frequency of exchange, if that's something about, people not able to sort of find their footing and fumbling around until they can, I guess I fall back on the thing, democracy is messy. And I think every once in a while, we sort of clean up the kitchen table where we get into a thing about cleaning up the house. And I wonder if that also in terms of makeup of town meeting members, the tolerance for a certain messiness in order to have an occasion where people can together work out something that they haven't already thought out before they got there.
I guess I would say democracy is messy, but it shouldn't be that much messier for women than for men. And, if we think it's a factor that might dissuade people from becoming part of our town government, how do we think about, I'm not saying, sort of saying please and thank you is going to make everyone happy, but it's more about what does communication look like that works equally well for women as for men, or equally well for people who are newer to town meeting? Should you have to haze your way through it? And I guess for me, that's where some of the comments come through, and also some of the opportunities. I know we're a really small group, so I think, who wrote to me? Oh, Kaya wrote to me about making the same presentation at the Diversity and Inclusion Commission, the committee, and I'm going to present this at Women's Commission. We're a small group, but between advisory and town meeting member association and those commissions, more people will sort of hear this, and it's going to be, and just sort of jumping ahead, it's going to be an opportunity to say, do people on town meeting care enough about improving it and making it more accessible to people who aren't on it, that we're willing to sort of act on it, whatever that would mean. Either doing a different kind of outreach to make it a more diverse population, more representative of the town, or thinking about does the experience have to be exactly what it is to be a valid governing experience. These are more similar kinds of graphs, the experience of scheduled and impromptu speaking, and again, interestingly, the less time you've been here, the more you see it as an opportunity to improve scheduled speaking or impromptu speaking. Then these two are sort of ambiguous, and I included them because everything else I presented was sort of skewed, so I just wanted you to see there are things that were totally ambiguous. The website, there's no pattern about who thinks it's good or bad. And as I said, there was no clarity about which website it was, so that's kind of a flawed question. But onto the free text comments. So there were 330 comments. As I said, some of them revealed preferences. So the people who had strong comments about listservs, many of them had no comment, didn't rank it either high or low. The ones about timing, we should end at 10 p.m. or we should be more predictable, almost none of them were the people who ranked that in the opportunities or strengths. There were a lot of, and then on the tools even the tools people like, they have complaints about or suggestions about. There were lots of calls for diversity, but fewer ideas about what that means or how it might be achieved. There were a significant number of concrete suggestions for improvement that we could and should explore and communicate, and ideally find champions to facilitate. But there's not some existing committee that's oh, let's give it to that committee, they'll fix it. It would need to be at the initiative of someone, or a group of people, depending on the issue. And then those related to town governance structure, everything from term limits to clarity about what different groups do, to why does advisory seem like a lifetime appointment at the fiat of the speaker, of the moderator. And whether you think that's true or not, that's certainly a perception that came through in the comments. And so onward, I'll just give a few examples. So I should say, I categorized these, so they didn't naturally fall into categories. I sort of read them through and put them in buckets. And within those buckets, what were purely comments or complaints versus ones that had embedded suggestions, because this is, there are a lot of opinions, but it's much more helpful to get suggestions. And this is kind of the specific areas that percolated most: the meeting structure, ideas about training and education. Lots of similar comments about the listserv. There was no one who said it's great, I love it, for sure. the materials and accessing materials, and then timing. So 15 people had comments about timing, for example. So here's some representative quotes, some sample quotes. This is on the category of diversity of people and ideas because that was the biggest piece of opportunity. So just to read this, town meeting needs to be much more representative regarding race, age, income, wealth, home ownership versus renting. It's interesting because there's no real way to track those that I know of. Like, it was enough effort to just track the average age and gender, or the age and gender of each town meeting member. I'm not sure if, and I guess people are, sort of assessing race based on how people present, sort of how they appear. Income, wealth, I don't know how that assessment is being made because we have an equal number of town meeting members from, like, I would say, higher property value precincts as lower property value precincts, but this is a perception. And the biggest diversity challenge I see is diversity with respect to age. Too many young middle-aged people are not engaged or even aware of the system of government, let alone running. The next one is actual suggestions. If we aspire for diversity, here are some ideas. Let's hold some info sessions at our public housing sites. Let's hold info sessions with the parents of African American Latino scholars. Let's hold info sessions with Brookline Asian American Family Network. Reach out to members of the Islamic Center of Boston who plan the annual iftar event. Develop concise, clear information describing the goals and the commitment to town structure, which is not clear. Reach out to the language clusters at the elementary schools where we know we've got town residents who are probably not connected in government. Maybe asking the too few relatively Black, Hispanic, and Asian town meeting members if they're open to this opportunity, how we could better diversify town meeting. Like, that's a laundry list, but someone would still have to say, I'm the one to do it. On tools and resources, I wish the warrant review was televised on big. It's hard to get out during town meeting season. I wish I knew when they were going to be going without sorting through the listserv, which can have a bunch of good stuff and a bunch of junk. It actually is the case that the warrant review is televised, so the opportunity might be how we communicate that, and part of that might be stuff gets really buried in that listserv. I find discussion on the listserv argumentative and unrepresentative. This was echoed. Dominated by people who have excessive time to devote to the exercise. I don't participate for that reason. The structure of the combined reports, especially for articles which attempt to amend bylaws, are extremely difficult to understand what's being proposed. I understand town is investing in tools to make bylaws more searchable. That would be helpful if these same tools were brought to bear on the warrant process. So this came up in the advisory a few minutes ago. And well, on one hand, there's a way that we have to present. There's sort of like the official governmental way we have to present things. There's no rule against having sort of simplified language explaining the same thing in a sidebar. And Arthur?
Yeah. We can raise the issue of diversity however we want to look at it, but there's really no vehicle to allow any of that to happen. I mean, there are no focus groups, special interest organizations. I know that there is a commission on women, but there isn't a commission for people of color, where some of this could be addressed, or a commission for people from the housing development, where, you know, these things could be raised, about making sure that people from the housing development come up with their own ideas about how they could be better represented, you know, in town government. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do. I agree. Those don't currently exist, and you know, if people say like, well, anyone can run, it's like, well, you have to let people know this even exists. I mean, it's pretty, you know, sort of labyrinthine to even figure out what the town government is, let alone to feel like it's there for you to be part of it. And I think this process, ideally, is a chance to say, okay, there's a critical mass of people who see this as a problem as it is now. how do we think about reaching populations that aren't effectively being reached? Whether we have formal commissions or not, it's easy enough to either informally or formally create ad hoc commissions to do this work. Or like I'm on the Women's Commission, we're looking at this Thursday night. I think I'm gonna say to the Women's Commission, like clearly we're not working as well for women as for men. What can we as a Women's Commission do, not just for people who are elected to town meeting, because that's a sort of rarefied subset already, but what are we doing to make women feel like they should and could be part of this town government? So it might also mean within our commissions that are sort of like business as usual, well, maybe this is a different agenda item.
I agree, but I would say the same thing to people in the housing development. How do we get them to feel invested, empowered, to take control of their own destiny and become involved in town meeting as a vehicle for that happening?
I mean, that's the question we probably won't answer tonight, but I think
No, I'm not asking you to answer it.
No, I think that's the essential question I saw percolate from all of this data is if a bunch, I'm just gonna say it simply, like a bunch of white people recognize that we're not really reflecting our population, but there aren't a lot of ideas how to do that. How do we move to try to do that? And who's the we that moves to try to do that? And I don't know that, I don't think we're gonna have the answer, but I think it's a very clear question, and it would really be unfortunate to have asked 100, asked 240 people, have 140 response, hear this and not do anything. And so, that's our marching orders. Yeah. So, this.
I just have one quick response on one very quick idea, which is, the idea of, and again, it's the who, but somebody, the who is who, who go and organize over at the housing project and sit down with them and have several evenings to explain, here's how town works, here's what's going on, here's when the election is. This gets done in all different types of ways. And if maybe we can get a subset, whether it's somebody from the caucus, the racial justice caucus, or whoever that person, that we is going to be. There are definitely, it's not impossible. It's just a question of putting it in place.
And part of that, and I'm just about done, and I know I've talked a long time, might be, one of the questions about even having done this survey is dissemination. So we've had this series of meetings, some of the inputs, and I think it's tacit on the tools, the idea of like maybe we could have little videos that are learning tools. Maybe we should have a little YouTube of the summary of this, because clearly not everyone could make it tonight. And maybe we should, as Town Meeting Member Association, write a piece for the tab about what we learned and what we think should happen. Because how do we get this word out? Even, the assumption of people reading the tab, I don't know if everybody reads the tab, but it's a something. But how do you engage people beyond the people who are really invested in how things currently happen?
Well, that's the responsibility of current town meeting members to get it out to their precinct. That's one of that should be everybody's marching order.
And so it's interesting in two ways, because if it's like, I wonder for my precinct, are my constituents, do they care if I'm happy about being on town meeting? Like, their response might be like, if you don't like it, don't do it, as opposed to improve it. But the corollary of that is, if it's this hard to achieve some of these things, including, sort of the experience for women or diversity when you're on town meeting, how much more or how much less accessible is it to think about being part of influencing the government structure if you're not already part of it? And that's kind of where it becomes relevant to constituents. And we easily could have a the way, what we did, there were a bunch of things we didn't ask in this. One thing we didn't ask was, how do you reach your constituents? Like, are you really representing anyone other than yourself? And there's a lot of self-satisfaction. It's like, I like going and seeing stuff there, I like that my precinct has popcorn usually, but that's not really representing my precinct. One of the things, I should say this, and I should have said this up front, we didn't ask people what precinct they were from because we didn't want this to identifying, like if I'm the only 80-year-old in precinct 11, who I am. So we didn't ask precinct, we didn't try to identify in very particular ways, but I think it's, that these are really fair questions, and I don't have the sense that these are questions that have been asked previously. But they, it may be, how there is in Congress, like, the new members of Congress, what's that called? They have their own little caucus, what's it called?
The newest members of Congress. Freshman class.
Yes, the freshman members of Congress, like, maybe there's an opportunity for people who are new to town meeting, their first or second term, to coalesce in some way and say what's working for us or not, and how can we improve this? Because if the only answer is either you don't run again because it's unsatisfactory, or you stay long enough till you're just like beaten down and you like it, that's not really a way in. So like, I think that there are sort of caucus opportunities. I mean, we're really good at it around the Green Caucus with warrant articles, but we're not really good at it improving how we govern ourselves. So just to finish up, no, I don't want to look at that one yet. This was one of my favorite ones, so I wanted to get this. The second one here, the first one is town meeting could be more efficient, debate curtailed after receiving hundreds of emails on a topic. Do we need to hear from 20 people on the same side? There must be a minority because I often have surprised emotions, close debate, fail. The one I like here is it might be worthwhile having a slide up showing what comes first if voted down, what we vote on next if voted for, what happens next. So this is to say, if you're an auditory learner and Sandy's voice really works for you, you can follow exactly what he's saying. And if you're not, maybe you're a visual learner or maybe whatever, it wouldn't be the worst thing to have a decision tree of some of the complicated votes. And that's quite, like, that is, there's no rule against that, there's no open meeting violation, there's no, whatever. Like, that is an easy, doable fix that would probably, for anyone who's newer to town meeting, or when we get into these sort of labyrinthine warrant articles, that could, it's an easy fix. And Sandy wasn't opposed to it. I think he was a little like, how would we do that technically? And do we need to get this technical person to do that? And I was thinking like those old overhead slides with magic markers. And like, that would be it. But anyway, that how isn't so much. The point is that that's an easy, non-combative idea that could improve the experience. The other one here would not have advisory spending time on every single resolution. Rather, like the Supreme Court, they could choose items to review, which would simplify things. We sort of have a custom of doing that, but it's not a rule to have everybody speak on everything. It's sort of like if you're on a jury and you do a straw vote up front and everyone agrees, you still, you need to do it, but maybe not exactly the same way. Anyway.
We should use advisory committee and Supreme Court in the same sentence.
Just an analogy, not mine. Okay, so lots of thoughts about process and structure. All boards and commissions should adopt a rule that chairs serve no more than 3 to 5 years, less concentration of power in a small number of people, too many meetings make it seem like not something for everyone, too many meetings in which the same people lead, so we're not hearing everyone's voice. So you can see these didn't all percolate in those pie charts, but they come up. There were a bunch of things that I categorized, for want of a better term, as transparency, civility, accountability, and leadership. And this was sort of a catch-all for like a lot of dissatisfaction. So you can see there, it's a badly broken cliff-like system, unwelcoming to new people, even if we act like we're not. So that's not really a suggestion. But it's a perception, and this is people who are elected feeling this way. So that's there. We asked people if you could change one thing about town government, what would it be? And not surprisingly, 34 people thought we should have a mayor. Kind of, because I would imagine the way the question was asked invited that response, sort of. And then just a few other, being part of the lineage, why do you like being on town meeting, part of the lineage that traces back to the roots of democracy in America, and New England in particular. So people like the idea that value the fact that they have the trust of constituents and neighbors. So like there are some positive comments in here, but a lot of ideas. I wanted to show you this. This is kind of a typical comment. So when I say I parsed these, this is one blob of a comment that I went through and pulled out what I felt fit in which category. And there are some really good ideas in here, but when I say that I sort of summarize them, this is the reason. If you look at this, it's not an easy thing to pull from. But I highlighted here How can we convince public school students to convince their parents it's worthwhile to run for office or become appointed? Why not use the robocall system for get out the vote for municipal elections once as an experiment, see if it helps? If so, we've learned something useful about reaching voters. Can we use robotext to alert people who are not confused? Meet the candidates at the venues where they will be speaking. You know, there's nothing like, a lot of that suggestions come up and it's like, well, that's an open meeting law violation, or there's a rule against that. But there isn't a rule against reminding people to vote. You know, we remind people when they can't park on the street when it snows. So, you know, that's important. So anyway, I like this one, even though it was hard to read through. And
What was
then
the lesson they had? They were need creative thinkers.
to feel free to make suggestions that we welcome to better engage residents. Are there towns doing this better than we do? Which ones can we learn from? And, you know, again, great questions. Is there someone who wants to do that analysis? I'll say this after, and I should have said this up front, and I think this is no surprise to anyone here, like, the interaction I had with Sandy in November was really negative, and that elicited a lot of people coming to me talking about what didn't work for them about town meeting. And my feeling was that was an opportunity to get answers, not to slam Sandy, but to really think about what that means. And one of the things I did was to watch videos of town meetings in other towns, and it was fascinating. In some other towns, the moderator sits. Like, there's no rule against that. If I had to stand for 4 hours, I would be surly for sure. But you know, they're like, or the moderator gives up the podium and the speakers come to that podium, and what does that say about the power dynamic? Like, those aren't rules, those are customs. And I don't think, you know, there was nothing here that said Sandy should leave the podium, but just looking at the dynamics in other towns is fascinating to me. So that's my last slide. The actions, next steps are, you know, these presentations and disseminating this, thinking about whether we do want to write potentially something for the tab, because there are a lot of people who won't come here. And I'll say this, even if we put a summary on the listserv, that listserv is, oh my God, I can't even go to that forum tab in Gmail. Like, I don't know what's going on there. But I feel like there are things I want to know about scooters that I'll never find out because I can't read through everything.
Yeah, it's wrong. Till you get hit by one.
So that's kind of where I would end, but I'm hoping that we can talk a little bit about what maybe we could do with this, or what would be the next step. Like, this is either interesting or not interesting, but it's not an end point for sure. And having Lloyd and Patrick here, and I'm sorry, I can't remember your name. Can you-
Barbara,
No, behind you.
behind me.
Sarah here, it's so, you know, your voices will give us ideas of how we can do what we need to do. So, do folks have thoughts about next steps, actions?
Has anyone ever done a survey? What's your experience with these surveys?
You're asking a question back here?
Yeah.
Well, people who live in.
We actually did a really simple survey, similar to this, looking at town meeting members and elected officials and commissions. And statistically, it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was significant, but the trends are pretty similar to what Jennifer has shown me this evening. With that being said, I think there has been some attempts to get in people who are underrepresented to actually be more civically engaged. And the outcome has been poor with that. We don't do enough of it, number one. Number two is people don't trust us. I mean, we do our pop-up events, we go to the public housing facilities. We actually had diversity meeting at the facility, and then with plenty of advertising, as we did, we got minimal participation. People would walk by the door but not come in. And so there's a trust factor that we need to build. And so I think the more of it, the more people are familiar with Brookline is trying to reach out and try to get people more involved. I think the more we do it, we're going to see a difference with that. The other issue that I see is, and you alluded to about there's sort of a lot of legalese language that a lot of the stuff that goes on to town meeting. you know, you have to spend hours reading it to get an understanding of it, and, you know, folks don't have the time to do that. So simplified language is really important. It's not dumbing down, as someone told me, when I made a comment about this. It's making it simple, and how does this impact me? That's what's gonna get people to the table. And if we aren't doing that, if it's all mixed up with big, huge words that, you know, people who aren't in government won't understand, they're gonna dismiss it. The other issue I find that is sometimes the dialogue that happens in town meetings and elected commissions, they tend to use very challenging language and highly emotional. And I get that sometimes some of the stuff is, you know, it gets us angry. But people look at that, and people who have really, I'm going to say, voices that want to be heard but don't fear actually presenting themselves, you won't hear from them. They shy away. And those folks are the most vulnerable folks that we actually need to hear the most from. So I'll just leave that there.
But we have a way, the system has a way of putting a block or a distance between themselves and people. I was born and raised in a low-income housing development, and the message was that you're poor, you're uneducated, you're black, you're Hispanic, we have the power, you do as you're told. And it's not that it just happens once. And it's not just that it happens in the development, but if you notice, I'll bet you if we did a survey, we'll find that Black and Latino teachers at the high school who live in housing projects or housing developments have parents who come to teacher-parent conferences far less than upwardly mobile white parents. It's the way our system works, and we have to find a way to let go of all the sickness that we have about what we see, what we think we see, what we want to see in other people, and how we can get them to participate.
Arthur, as you know, I grew up in, I guess, what is now fashionably called white working class in Detroit. I don't think I knew anybody who went to college. Everybody I knew made cars. My father made cars, my uncles made cars, I made cars. But we were not, let's just say that the lovers of government were not all that distant from us in a way. And why was that? Well, because we had unions, and it was a union hall, and these things were, if they weren't discussed in the plant, they were discussed to some extent. The guys sat around and wives sat around. My mother went out on canvases. She didn't have a college education, but these things were explained. The union membership now is at the lowest that it's ever been in 100 years. It is reviving to some extent, and unions are much, for obvious reasons, threatened as never before. And in our own state, we see with Stop and Shop, we see with the hospital workers, we see with the hospitality workers, and we see with the teachers, the large, 110,000 people in just the one teachers union, in the MTA. So I think what you're talking about is in part to reconstitute some of those other alternate means of political education.
I think we need to do more listening and less talking. We don't go out and do education. We say, what's on your mind? What's frustrated you? Where have you turned and been stopped? We don't talk, we listen. I bet when your mom was canvassing, she was doing that. Listening to people's concerns, stop talking.
They had, I'm sorry, Brooks Ames organized a forum, not a candidates night. I don't know how long ago it was, but maybe 6 years ago. And it was interesting to hear what the tenants had to say to the three candidates. One of whom was Bernard Green, another was Merrill Lease, late Merrill Lease, and Nancy Heller. Okay, but what the tenants had to present to those three, I think they just took it through the garbage can. Seriously. All right, we ignore them.
It sounds like there has been outreach. There's never been a survey like this.
There's been a civic engagement survey.
No, I think that's Regina would talk about. Town meeting has had surveys before, but she's not here.
So, but our office put out a civic engagement survey asking people specifically what are your barriers when you want, if you want to get involved. We got a lot of people saying like, I just don't have the time. We also got a lot of people saying, there's no childcare.
Right.
Yep.
Or,
Right.
I have no physical way of getting there because I don't have a car. Or it's at the wrong time because I work evenings.
Right.
And so you're really gonna have to make some concrete choices about, are you willing to make changes to a structure that works for a bunch of people that have already answered a survey to make it more available to people who have answered another survey and said, I think what it was like, over 50% said like, look, I can't do this, I don't have time. But like, there was a subset of people we spoke to who said, yeah, I would love to be involved, but I don't have the money. Like, pay me to represent people in my community, like, then, yes, I can do that. And there are towns that pay their town meeting members. Somerville is a great example. It's a nominal fee, but like, and then there are people here who say like, well, I would like to be able to say I don't take money from the town. Well, that's great. You come from a life of privilege. Don't take money from the town. There are other people who could really use that $3,000 to pay for childcare, to pay for the Uber to get them to town meeting. Don't make them feel bad for taking the money if that also means that gets them in the room.
Great suggestion.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to hear from Barbara and from you because you're newest as town meeting members. Are you a new town meeting member also? No.
Oh, this is me, yes, you're right.
I am,
About 10 years.
So mid-range. And it is interesting that, so we did get comments among the existing meeting members, so that doesn't factor people who can't come at all, but a lot of comments about childcare or just not being able to put your kid to bed at night, a bunch of nights in a row, and like the legit comment that like, look, if I'm watching it on big from home, and then I just drive over when there's the vote, like, I don't know, it should sound like such a bad idea.
Okay, but if you're gonna do that, realistically, there are gonna need to be some things in place, like our office has been talking about accessibility, like, of town meeting for quite a while. There are some major issues. Number one, as far as I am aware, and I'm still trying to get a real sense of this, like, there are literally not closed captions available live while Vegas is recording. It's available afterwards if the recording is then put on YouTube and then you can activate the closed captioning setting, but if you want to sit at your house and then drive over to vote live, and you have a hearing loss or you have a hard time, if you're a visual learner, so you need the words written out in front of you, you can't get that. We've been talking about ways to make town meeting more accessible in terms of adding CART, which is a real-time transcription, like visually of what's being said, and then also in terms of like the documentation, how to make it more accessible for people who are using screen readers. And I know it's a small, like you may think it's a small subset of the population, but like there's a small subset of identified people who would benefit from that, but there are a lot of people who may never identify as someone with a disability who could also benefit from that. Plus, a CART recording of the meeting might hold certain people accountable for what they say. So it's just a thought. And I'm really new and probably risking my job, but like there's just I have lots of questions about how we can build something sustainable and engaging. Like, if you want people who live in housing developments to be represented in the meeting, then maybe it needs to be a rule that 10 town meeting members come from this population. 10 town meeting members come from, a certain number of town meeting members must have kids in schools. A certain number of town meeting members, you build the diversity in by making it part of the qualifications. I don't know. I'm from Ohio. You don't do this. I have like lots of questions about how we could structure town meeting so that you get what you want. Like we keep saying we want diversity, then make it impossible for it to continue to not be as diverse as you want it to be.
So I think there's a lot of things that we can explore what to do, and I think it's really important that I do think the challenge is for town meeting members is to how to make a difference in the stuff that came up. Our office is there to help as much as we can. We are a department of 3 people, so we're very limited, but we're willing to help out as much as we can with this process. We think this is a good thing. This is part of our GARE process too. We want to keep getting people as diverse as possible to actually make decisions about how we do things, and part of that is part of the political process here.
Anything, sorry. Just because you're in your first term, does this resonate? Do the results resonate? Does it seem, or you don't have to say anything?
No, yeah, it's not unfamiliar, and I think my responses were probably some of those in the larger collar lines, I would say. Nothing is terribly surprising to me at all. And I think that what's critical now is, that final bullet point, the action steps, So here's the information, what do we do with it, and how do we improve things? I mean, I think making it impossible essentially for the status quo to be maintained. Somehow, I don't know how we want to force something, but whether it's by changing all of our behavior, that will make it impossible, or if there's some regulations or some warrant articles or something that happens. But I applaud that idea in that, yeah, it should be impossible for perpetuation of what people are finding dissatisfying, and B, I think is detrimental to our community.
It's unrepresented.
And it's unrepresented too, yeah, what's the question? Well, metaphorically make it impossible.
No, but I think it's kind of an interesting concept. I'm just curious.
Well, like, look what we just did with the election as far as the increase in the number of women elected to Congress. Like, we didn't mandate, we didn't make a law, but we made an effort.
So identified campaign, got me done,
But,
and national support.
I mean, relationships need to be built in order to make things.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Introduce yourself, I'm sorry, I can't
I'm sorry, I'm Sarah Kaplan, I'm the AD coordinator and community relations specialist for the town of Brookline. I'm really, very impressed by the fact that you're continuing to be willing to look at this issue. I think in order to make these kinds of changes, though, you're gonna have to kind of upend a certain amount of paradigms. And it's gonna make some people who are super comfortable, who identified as 70+% happiness, not so happy. Or it's gonna make some people who are like, I'm super unhappy, either like leave or more happy. And that's great. Or less. I don't know. I'm just.
Are you getting her?
I think that it's got to be done with intention, and it's also got to be done. It can't be done by necessarily by decisions can't be made by the people that it doesn't represent. So it can't be done by people in this room without the input of people that are not in this room.
Absolutely.
So if you want to create programs where you go and you out to the housing developments, or you meet with the parents of African American and Latino scholars and call our office, we'll help you build those programs. But somebody's gonna have to say, I commit to doing this, because there are only 3 of us and there's only so many hours in a day. And also, it's gonna have, we need more people to do these surveys. When I reached out to all the town meeting members, we got 164 responses back when we were looking for simply demographic information. And there are 240? So that's not.
That's a great response rate. You got 160?
164. For 164 individual responses. I don't know how many actual. I'm hoping that they were all individual town meeting members, but you could have filled out the form 3 times. I don't know.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, my ride is coming and I don't live in Brookline, so I have to go, but call my office. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, great to have you here. We're here to every other presentation, we're here to every other presentation, please.
I would like her. I would like Sarah. So I said we would end at 8:30, and I just want to respect people's time. Does anyone have anything, any sort of last thing they want to say in response to this, or say I'll do it, I'll be the one to.
So not a non-town meeting member, is there an opportunity to present a summarized version of the survey to the greater town meeting body?
So,
Or is
to the greater town meeting body?
Yes.
Yeah, how's this getting presented to town meeting?
Well, this was one of the ways. It's recorded on video, and so we can distribute that link. I think it would be worth considering whether we want to write sort of a summary or invite Abby back in, who's now in the tab to, present this in some more public way. The list, so we can put this link on the listserv. The list, but you heard the problem with the listserv. And the fact that I had to present the Town Meeting Member Association with advisory, with Women's Commission, and then soon with Diversity and Inclusion Commission, that's a start. But again, that's a very inside view. But then it's sort of to me, we need someone, and I'm willing to be a person, but not the person, to take the next step, to think about all those outreaches.
But as town meeting members, you need to know, the results of the survey. I don't know if the listserv or a non-live meeting is the way to do it.
So that's why we're being videotaped. We do now.
Well, actually, I like your suggestion. I mean, ideally, we should have a summary of this at town meeting.
So that's a really interesting idea. I would obviously, I'd be pleased to do that. You know, at our special town meeting, they said Jennifer will present her survey results. That was a big step forward, but it wasn't really my survey. It was the town meeting member association survey. I mean, what advisory did tonight was to meet at 6, an hour before their meeting time. And they had it was like they were almost all there. So it was interesting enough to people to come early. Now you get into the same issue of like, it's hard enough getting to town meeting at 7. Do people want to come an hour early? But that's a way to do it. That's,
Or we could postpone our usual business and start at 7 and do this for an hour.
No, not even an hour. I mean.
I could do it faster.
Yeah.
But,
But we should distill it.
Well,
Because
exactly.
you can, I think this is, you did a great job. I mean, this is a
Phenomenal.
lot of
Great
work.
service.
You should.
Yeah.
But is there a way to have it posted somehow, but then have like the clip notes? And groups, and then once you have the clip notes, you could just take out something with that. You could take out a piece of paper that goes in warrant articles electronically. You could take, it could just be a simple tablet.
I mean, I would say honestly, the first 3 pages of this are the summary. What were the questions, who responded, what were the lead stories? If you want to double click behind those, you can look at all the graphics, but that's the
But to
story.
your point about the cheat sheet, I think gender, age, and diversity are my 3 takeaways. Satisfaction with town meeting, I'm not sure how to think about that, but my 3 takeaways from today have been the gender, the age, and the racial diversity. Yeah.
So it would be very easy to summarize.
You definitely, forget about clicking and all that, people need to hear live. Yeah, it needs to be, because unless you have a captive audience, we're all too busy. Everybody's clicking other things. So, and then the other thing is this needs to be elevated beyond the tab. I mean, there has to be other, whatever, that's a whole, I'm digressing. I mean, it needs lifting, it needs elevation all across multiple media in order for everybody to appreciate it. So one place to start is at town meeting.
There's a lot of recommendations that came through here, which can be tackled, but they need to be tackled by people.
Right.
Things like how should what's the organization of the town? How do you do a warrant article? How do what happens at town meeting? All those things are kind of like the reason that the Town Meeting Members Association exists. It's supposed to provide all of that training and exposure and that sort of thing. Maybe that's kind of where it starts. But people have to really want to get involved. And I'm thinking of, in town, there was a parking lot that was being converted to an apartment house on Auburn Street. And all of a sudden, the whole neighborhood got upset or involved, and it really made a difference as far as the planning board was concerned, the zoning board. It's the first time that I'd ever heard the zoning board turn down an application. And, they did, it came back again, but passed. At least it was that sort of thing, but it was a matter of the neighborhood all got excited, they all got involved. And that's the kind of thing that I think we need from the Town Meeting Members Association. We had a suggestion from there in another town, there's a suggestion that every town meeting member needs to go to at least one TMMA meeting during the year, for example. Just little things like that, and we might be able to stir up some interest. But right now, I think there's the Town Meeting Members Association doesn't have enough people that are paying attention to it to be able to do some of these things that are recommended in this survey. And I think the survey was great for actually surfacing some of these concrete suggestions. And I think, we can't do everything that's on there, but maybe there's maybe there's 4 things in there that we can consider. but we need people to get excited and try to do it. I'm done.
I think the freshman class idea is not a bad one because it's new energy and something beyond Sandy's, however long his spiel is that he does in the selectmen's hearing room, which makes very clear when I say please conclude, you better finish the sentence in your mouth. But, you know, something richer and social and with some of the more experienced people that answer questions. I mean, that seems like a not that difficult thing to experiment with, and we have election week today. So, you know, a freshman class social with everybody invited. We need a little money to offer refreshments, but, and perhaps this time is too short for this year, but, I mean, you know, start with the new people.
I mean, I totally agree. I'm just looking at, has that ever happened before, or it's like,
What has ever happened?
kind of creating a freshman caucus, or segmenting?
Not that I'm aware of.
We, precinct 12 was a very community group, and so if someone new comes in precinct 12, we always meet before every warrant article, and so there's a camaraderie within the precinct, but it's never transferred, you know, everyone knows each other in the precinct, we meet together, the new people get in it, you know, the votes, so I don't know if other precincts do that.
Speaking for precinct 7, we don't.
But we've always done it, but it was always championed by an older.
We do it, but only because you told me to.
Yeah, but it's really great, and so now that there's, and then we invite speakers to come to the sessions, and so from the whole school, she came up, we had different people come in and give different presentations.
But even a recommendation like that, that doesn't come from Sandy's training, because Sandy's training, again, is about what happens in the auditorium. It's not really about how do we serve best as in a governing role.
We should profile that for your precinct.
The precinct, that's easy, but is that the takeaway from the survey? Is the takeaway from the survey, the camaraderie, or is that what you find the takeaway
Well,
from your survey?
that's
not my takeaway, but I'm curious.
My takeaway is that nothing is going to happen unless we talk. You know,
So
Bill.
camaraderie is very important.
Yeah, so like, if I say, I'll do this, that doesn't really help, because we need a critical mass of people who are invested in whatever change is, and in order to do that, you need to talk about it. So it's not the end point, but it's a means, and I think what we saw is that people who are new, I know we have to go there, people who are newer to town meeting are less satisfied. So in that sense, yes, like the satisfaction can come within your precinct community, it can come among other freshmen, it can come around an affinity issue like, okay, how do we broaden who's here? But, so it's like, that's not the end point, but it's certainly a need.